Hello, and welcome to the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. I'm Mario Sikora, and this is the place where my co-hosts TJ Dawe and TJ Ingrassia and I discuss movies through the lens of the Enneagram model of personality. If you like the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and join the conversation on our social media pages. For now, grab some popcorn, sit back, and enjoy the show.
You know, guys, it feels like we've done this before. Is it just me? This episode, very excited. Number one, we're talking about one of all of our favorite movies, the movie Groundhog Day. But even more important than that, we are being rejoined by our returning champion, María José Munita, who was all fans of the show are familiar with. So, María José, it's great to have you. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you for inviting me back. I'm really excited to be here with the three of you.
All right, great. TJ, how you doing? And how excited are you to have María José with us?
So excited.
I love the idea of fans of the podcast. I think there are hordes of people out there. We've got your letters. We responded to the hashtags that have trended. We've brought María José back.
It's all we ever get, you know, in the subject lines of our thousands and thousands of email is more María José, and I've set it up so it goes to a filter so I don't have to see them all. But yes, due to popular demand, we do have María José back. So and again, we're talking about the movie Groundhog Day. It feels like, you know, there's been kind of a theme with some of the movies recently that they're movies that have become cultural phenomena. Right, particularly as we did with Shawshank Redemption. Now, this movie was a bit more popular than Shawshank was when it first came out, but not hugely popular when it started, but has gone to take a life of its own. And you know what? I'm not going to get ahead of it. There's a whole lot of things to talk about here. So, first of all, I think I forget who exactly picked this movie. I know María José suggested it, but I don't want to step on you guys. Who wants to share why we picked this movie to talk about?
I was probably the first person to mention it, because we started looking at movies with spiritual themes to them. And this is a movie that I took completely at face value when it first came out. I saw this when it was in the theaters. I was in college. I loved it, as did everybody I knew. It never occurred to me that it could be interpreted spiritually. And then a few years ago, I read a book of interviews with comedy writers, one of which was Harold Ramis. And in the intro to the interview with him, it mentioned that Jews, Buddhists, Christians, and Hindus have all championed the movie Groundhog Day as the perfect illustration of some essential element of their spiritual teachings. And then as soon as I started looking at it with that lens, it was like, of course. And how brilliant that it works on two levels simultaneously.
Yeah, good. And we'll come back to talk about that more, certainly. But María José, you independently suggested this movie when we said, look, we have to respond to viewer demand here, or listener demand, and bring you back to the show. What movie do you want to talk about? You chose this one. Why did you choose this one, María José?
It's a movie I enjoy. I'm not really watching movies all the time, as probably you do.
As us losers with no lives.
No, just different interests. Yeah. I have no judgment around it. And I've found myself bringing up not just the movie, but the concept of the Groundhog Day with younger people, older people. It's just this reference, and people get it, you know? And when I ask, did you watch it? And some people who have not watched it, I look at them like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you not watch this movie? Just as like you did years ago when I had not watched it. But I think that it just, you're missing on something if you haven't. So, and it's enjoyable. And it is what TJ was saying before. It illustrates a path, a journey that it's worth paying attention regardless of the type. I think this is Enneagram podcast, but I don't think the most important thing here is our types or instinctual biases, but the process of growth that it illustrates.
Yeah, great. And so María José kind of touched on this idea of movie as meme, right? And when we talked about The Princess Bride a couple of episodes, we talked about how we couldn't think of a movie that was more quotable. Right, it's almost like every line you can quote. Lebowski is almost like that as well. That there's just quote after quote. But I can't think of a movie that has come to represent a concept in the popular culture in the way that Groundhog Day was. Because, as María José said, people, all over the world of all ages understand what you mean when you say this feels like Groundhog Day, even if they haven't seen the movie. I don't know, thoughts on any movies that are in that same category, guys? Anything come to mind? Because I can't think of any. There's the idea for, some ideas from The Matrix have, taken hold, right? So that's close, but I don't think that's
the first
quite
Matrix, not those garbage sequels.
Yeah.
Maybe Sliding Doors, although I haven't seen it myself, but the idea of divergent paths.
Yeah, and again, but I think that if you mention Sliding Doors, I'll get what you mean, but not everybody will, right? But I
don't
did
know
see
what
the
that
movie.
means.
Well, see, there you go, right? So, it's a movie. Was that Gwyneth Paltrow?
Yep.
Yeah, and a similar idea is Run Lola Run, the German movie with Franca Potente, which is again 3 different scenarios of what happens as she's trying to save her boyfriend. But still, this is one that just everybody gets.
Yeah, so there was one, and maybe it's old as well. It's Sophie's Choice. I think that.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good. Yeah, very good, María José. We brought you here for. No wonder the fans want you, right? No, that's excellent.
Slightly more depressing
I know.
connotations that one brings up.
Yeah, that's the way to kill a party.
But it brings up something regardless,
Yes, and for those listeners who don't understand that reference, it's about a woman who had to choose which one of her children would die and which would survive, right? So, all right, great. So, TJ Dawe, you're going to give us a synopsis of Groundhog Day. Why don't you do it? And please just do it once, okay?
Okay, Groundhog Day came out in 1993. It was co-written, co-produced, and directed by Harold Ramis. It's about Phil Connors, played by Bill Murray, who's a TV weatherman in Pittsburgh. We meet him the day before he goes to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania to cover the annual Groundhog Day festivities, where the famous groundhog Punxsutawney Phil either sees his shadow, predicting a longer winter, or doesn't see his shadow, predicting an earlier spring. So he heads on the road with his producer Rita, played by Andy McDowell, and cameraman Larry, played by Chris Elliott. Rita is much friendlier and optimistic than the sarcastic and snide and funny Phil. Phil is put up at a B&B, and the next morning his alarm clock goes off, and it's 6 a.m., and it plays the song I've Got You, Babe by Sonny and Cher, and he hears the banter of the local DJs. And then he goes to Gobbler's Knob, which is the part of town where the groundhog is brought out of its hutch. He covers the story somewhat sarcastically, refuses to do a second, more sincere take, and he's determined to get back to Pittsburgh that very day, but a blizzard sends them all back to Punxsutawney. So Phil stays another night in the B&B, wakes up the next morning, the alarm clock hits 6 a.m., plays the same song, the DJs do the same banter, Phil encounters the same people in the B&B who confirm that today is actually Groundhog Day. He goes to cover the story, no one else seems to realize they're repeating the day, and then this happens again and again and again and again. Phil goes through various phases as he adjusts to this new bizarre reality. He eventually tries to seduce Rita, learning more and more about her through successive days, but he's unsuccessful. And then he tries to kill himself repeatedly. But he keeps waking up in bed at 6 a.m. no matter what. Then he turns a new leaf. He starts being kind to both Rita and Larry. He learns about the lives of some of the people who live in Punxsutawney. He makes ice sculptures. He learns to play the piano. He tries to save the life of an impoverished old man. He eventually covers the groundhog story in a genuinely warm and artful way, and then goes about town doing various good deeds, ultimately playing piano at the town celebration that night. And this impresses Rita so much that they go out and have a beautiful date together. He tells her that he loves her, and they fall asleep in each other's arms. And the next morning he wakes up, and Rita is still next to him. And the clock is playing I've Got You, Babe, but with a different DJ banter, because now it's finally February 3rd. He proposes that he and Rita live in Punxsutawney, and they live happily ever after.
but also suggests that they rent just to see if, at
Which
first,
apparently was an ad lib by Bill Murray.
Right. Thanks, TJ. Now, Maria Jose, do you celebrate Groundhog Day in Chile?
Do you really need to ask that? We hardly.
Do you have groundhogs?
No, it's not a thing here at all. Not the animal, not the festivity, not at all.
Gotcha. And how about in Canada, TJ Dawe? Is it a holiday there?
It's certainly observed. It's not a holiday. You don't get to not work that day.
The bank doesn't close, right? Yeah. Okay.
But yes. Everybody mentions that it's Groundhog Day. And I think the movie probably has a lot to do with that. I think the movie had a lot to do with more people just being aware that there is such a thing as Groundhog Day, much less paying any attention to it.
It wouldn't be relevant here because February 2nd is the middle of summer.
Right.
So it would have to change the whole meaning of it completely because it says, okay, so how much summer do we have left? Yeah. And, it wouldn't
You would
work.
have to do it in August, right?
Yes.
Basically, yeah, gotcha. Yes. So, okay, great. Yeah, so, Groundhog Day is one of the sillier, or at least was up until then, one of the sillier and least relevant. It was really just a promotional scam by the town of Punxsutawney, Philadelphia, which is Pennsylvania, which is just a tiny little po-hunk town. But it has become sort of a national phenomenon, and particularly since the movie. So, I don't know. You mentioned, TJ, that about Rames's quotes about this movie representing different spiritual traditions. Also, has been pointed out to represent different philosophical traditions, for example, as well. For example, Nietzsche had the idea of eternal recurrence, right? That we live, the same life over and over and over again, exactly the same, and so forth. And some other philosophers have expanded on that or modified it to some extent. Also, it is very coherent with Camus' Myth of Sisyphus, which is one of my favorite essays, talking where Camus is exploring or exploring Sisyphus as the representative of all of us. He's the guy that had to push the rock up the hill and then let it roll back down. And the gods felt that meaningless labor could be the most awful punishment, so they cursed him to do this for eternity. But Camus takes a different take on it and says that this is, the condition we all face, and that is certainly reflected in the movie. Ironically, the screenwriter had none of that in mind when he wrote this. He was just doing kind of a thought experiment and said, I wonder what it would be like to do the same thing every day, right? Before I go further on that, other thoughts, observations about this as a philosophical theme?
Just to build on the Myth of Sisyphus, I don't know if any of you have seen, it wasn't a particularly successful movie, but the movie Everybody Wants Some by Richard Linklater, which is an autobiographical film about his experiences as a college baseball player in Texas in 1980. And in a scene near the end of the movie, he discusses a paper that he wrote about the Myth of Sisyphus, which I think was in his college application. And he relates it to the experience of being an athlete, where you have to do the same motions again and again and again. And he takes something different out of it, which was that the story is usually given as an idea of a hellish punishment, whereas he sees it somewhat differently, as it gives Sisyphus something to do, something to focus on. And his experience as an athlete, which Richard Linklater really was, is that you can actually find plenty of nuance in a repeated activity, and find just you improve at it, and it focuses your mind, and it can improve the entire quality of your existence.
Yeah. And this was Camus' point as well, and where he said, the first reaction to it is scorn at our condition, and there's a great quote in there that, the assumption that all fates can be surmounted by scorn. And then we begin to realize, well, no, actually they can't, and so we have to learn to accept our condition, and it's only when we accept our condition that we can truly grow and find freedom. So this is not just a light, funny comedy. This is not Stripes. This is not...
same writer, same stars.
Well, there you go, right? And so this goes to show we start to see a change, at least in the career. No, actually, the change in Bill Murray's career actually had its roots earlier, which I want to talk about in a moment. But again, it's not Caddyshack. It's not just a fun movie. And this was a source of the tension between Harold Ramis and Bill Murray. In fact, after making this movie, they had been good friends, and after making this movie, they didn't talk again for 20 years because of a difference in what they wanted to achieve with the movie. Bill Murray wanted it to be more philosophical and contemplative, whereas Ramis wanted it to be a fun movie, right? Go ahead, Maria Jose.
What is also interesting to me is how my mind goes to, like, why is this happening? And they just couldn't bother with it. They don't explain why this is happening. And they just enjoy or kind of show that, present it, and leave it up to you. It's a non-issue why this is happening.
Actually, one of the things that Ramis said in that interview that I read was that it wasn't in the original draft. That's one of the things he liked about the original draft. And then the head of the studio said, you got to explain it. So he wrote an explanation in which an ex-girlfriend of Phil's, who was spurned by him, wanted to get revenge on him, and buys a book called like 100 Hexes You Can Put on Someone, and steals Phil's watch, and hence the time element of it. And then that was in the script. And then there was this change of studio heads, and the new guy came in and he met up with him, and the new guy said, what's with all this explanation of why he's cutting the time? You don't need that. And Ramis is like, thank you. Whoosh, gone.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I don't miss the fact that we don't find out how and why this is happening. I don't think that's necessary. I think that would put it into the realm of, like, there's a rational explanation as to why, which is ridiculous.
I think, too, it would have lessened the viewer experience of what Phil was going through, right? I mean, because, that had to be the question for him, as well, why on earth is this happening, and so forth. And and we're there with him in experiencing that. So, TJ Ingrassia, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just that if they had explained it, then it puts it on some outside agency. It makes Phil sort of like a victim of the will of some higher power or something. And without the explanation, he's sort of protagonist and antagonist at the same time. And so it just focuses on him and his experience. So yeah, I think it's much for the better that they didn't go down that road.
Yeah. And even though it wasn't written to explicitly track, spiritual narratives, that would have been gone if we had seen the whole, witchcraft spell or something, right? I mean, it would not have been a philosophical movie anymore. It would not have been something that got you thinking about the experience necessarily, right? It becomes a, how do I solve this problem of, sort of movie, which would have been much less successful, I think. No. I did read that so there was a lot of back and forth between the scriptwriter, the original scriptwriter, and Harold Ramis, who basically rewrote it, many parts of it to make it lighter and more, popular. They did say that they used Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 Stages of Grief as a roadmap in a broad way. But beyond that, there's no sign that there was they weren't setting out to make a philosophical statement like, say, for example, the Wachowskis were with The Matrix, right? They were very clearly wanting to make a statement. But Harold Ramis and the scriptwriter just wanted to make a comedy, right? And, make good movies. So,
and one of the changes, supposedly in the first draft, it opens with Phil waking up on the 10,000th year of going through the same day.
Wow.
Like, they established that through voiceover.
Wow.
And Ramis thought, first of all, 10,000 years is a lot. In the end, he believes that the movie, he repeated the day for about the equivalent of 10 years. But also, he just liked the idea of the viewer experiencing it the same rhythm that Phil does, of just that it's new to us the way that it's new to him.
And that was one of the interesting things about the pacing of the movie, is that you knew it was a long time. Right, but it didn't seem like eternity. Right, it almost felt as if, okay, it's awful, but not unendurable. I mean, 10,000 years of that would just be, unendurable. So, all right, great. Any other interesting casting ideas? They wanted Tom Hanks. Every movie in 1993 wanted Tom Hanks to star in it. But Hanks felt that if he was the character, because he is so likable, and so his image is one of being such a likable guy, that the transformation wouldn't have seemed as sincere, right?
Or interesting.
Or interesting, yeah, absolutely. Michael Keaton was considered. Chevy Chase was considered for the role. And it was the first movie, I really think, that showed that Bill Murray could act. And in fact, that was one of the concerns about having him in the movie, is that they weren't sure that he had the acting chops for this film. But Harold Ramis believed that he did, and proved to be true. All right, so I've been thinking about how I want to get into this movie, and there are definitely the psychospiritual elements that we want to address. But I think I'd like to talk about Enneagram types first, just to kind of get that onto the table. There are really only two characters in this movie. I mean, only two substantive characters, and everybody else is
Larry, right?
yeah. I mean, Larry is a prop.
Poor Larry.
25 cents.
Ned is I'm trying to Ned Ryerson. Yeah, Needle Nose Ned, by the great Stephen Tobolowsky. I mean, I'll watch that guy anytime doing anything. I love him. Anytime he shows up, I know I've already gotten my money's worth on the movie. But I don't know. We could go all day and not decide what Enneagram types any of those folks were. So really, we're looking at Andie MacDowell's Rita and Bill Murray's Phil. I want to go at Rita first, just to get the easy one out of the way, I think, or at least I think an easy one. Maria Jose, tell us about Rita, please, and what you think is her Enneagram type.
I was between two subtypes. So I saw her first as a preserver. She's a lot about kind of the festivities and home and kind of the nest in general, and history or literature and things like that. And she's kind of not very flashy and very good with the nuts and bolts, being a producer and all of that. So that was easier for me. And then I was between 9 and 7. She has this lightness, and she's sweet. And I think I'll stay with 9. There's this idealism, like idealizing couples and a partner in general and what family is. And she sees kind of the nice or the good in everyone, and toasts to world peace. I mean, that's kind of it's just too much, but
on the nose there.
Yes, yeah, I wouldn't make a call based on that, but given that was my hypothesis anyway, it just strengthened it. So that would be my
good thoughts. TJ or TJ?
Yeah, completely agree. Subtype hadn't even occurred to me, but everything you've said makes sense. But she seemed like a knock it out of the park 9 to me. Just so 9ish, gentle, optimistic. Sees the best in people. She's sincere. She's easygoing, even when Phil is being a dick. And when he's finally expressing interest in her and wants to know about her, she says things like, I just go with the flow, see what happens. Or when she comes to believe that he is stuck in this recurring day, she says, maybe it's not a curse, it's just in how you look at it. It's a very optimistic 9-y approach. I think Andie MacDowell's probably a 9 in real life. I think she's built a career of playing 9s. And I met a woman who had a small part in 4 Weddings and a Funeral, who described how on set she just could not have been nicer. Just completely friendly, low-key. So, yeah, I think she's just a 9, period. And maybe if somebody else had played it, it might have come across as another type. But, yeah, hard for me to see that character as anything other than a 9.
There's several parts of the movie where she mentions or refers to not being arrogant. There's these really kind of not wanting arrogant people around her. And, yeah.
And this is an issue for 9s, right?
Yes.
The big fear of the 9 is that someone will perceive them as being arrogant. Yeah. TJ Ingrassia, thoughts on
Yeah, it was interesting. You said you were torn between 7 and 9 because that's exactly where I landed. And I wonder if it's the difference between Andy McDowell's performance and then the words that were written in the script. Like, I think maybe if you read just the script language, it could come across more 7-ish. You know, she talks a lot about having fun. She mentions fun a lot. She's very enthusiastic. But it's hard to see Andy McDowell as anything other than a 9, like you said, TJ. She's just the kind. Well, actually, what's the line? He said when she's sleeping next to him at one point, Phil says, "You're the kindest, sweetest, prettiest lady I've ever met in my whole life. I've never seen anyone that's kinder to people than you are." And that seems like Andy McDowell. And for whatever it's worth, my mother and my mother-in-law are both 9s, and that line pretty much describes both of them. So I'm on board with Rita as a 9.
They must be listeners of the show if you're going to go and say that, TJ. Yeah.
They're like half
I'm
of
sure
our
they
audience.
are. They're the ones that keep sending the messages about bringing Maria Jose back, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, look, for me, this was a hardcore 9 character. It was pretty obvious. And yes, if you look at some of the words, yeah, you could read 9, or you could read 7 into it, but the affect is pure 9. And there were a lot of themes about peace and wanting people to get along and wanting to go live on a mountaintop somewhere and, you know, all of these things. And Andy McDowell, I always think of as a walking sigh. You know, I mean, just this... you know, kind of, you know, going through life with her incredible hair, you know, and
that accent,
and the Southern accent, you know, that's, you know, not obnoxiously Southern, but, you know, make your knees weak kind of Southern.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's not on the issue of the movie, but I'm starting to get the accents of Americans. It's, yeah. So I was guessing this must be Southern, and yeah, well. It's nice to see that.
We all just sound the same to you? Is that what you're saying?
Well, there's subtleties, and they don't sound the same, but I'm not always able to identify where it's coming from.
And by the way, TJ, just for you, when Maria Jose says Americans, she's referring to people from the United States, right? Because, you know, TJ is an American as well. So,
so am I.
This is a long-going thing that Maria Jose and I have, you know. That
I think it was the first conversation we ever had.
Yeah, right. That I helped her understand why some other people on the IEA board could not comprehend that American does not refer to just people from the United States. But
I want to throw one thing out there. I have a question for you guys, not to play devil's advocate necessarily, but I want to see if you can clarify something. The one hesitation I had with Rita as a 9, and maybe this could be explained by the fact that she's just a very healthy person. One of the stereotypes of the 9 is that they can be pushovers, that they are like almost like ghosts, or that there's no substance to them, that they're easily swayed, that they can't stand up for themselves. And Rita has no problems standing up to Phil. She's very firm with him when she needs to be. She seems to be in possession of herself, very confident. So is that just the mark of a very healthy 9? Or talk me through someone. I could see how someone could have a question mark about that.
Yeah. You know, I thought about it, and I think that's a misunderstanding about 9s when you think that you can do whatever you want with them, that there's no substance, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up. I think that when you look at the whole, you see that she has all the elements of the 9 and still is a reasonable, competent in life human being, you know? And even when she slaps his face or stands up to him, she's nice, you know? There's some sweetness in everything she does. So that's what happens with 9s. They can say the worst thing to you, and they will sound nice anyway most times.
Yeah, I'm going to add to this because it is one of the misperceptions of 9s. And, you know, as somebody who works with senior executives, a disproportionate number of leaders in big organizations are 9s. And, you know, so the way I think about these things is our issues are like fault lines, right? Meaning when pressure builds up and pressure builds up, it'll break in a certain place, right? And for 9s, when all the pressure builds up and the pressure builds up, it will break in that they will become passive in a particular incident, right? And again, depending on how much pressure they feel, how healthy they are, et cetera, you'll see more or less of that. But most nines I know are assertive, confident people, but that tends to be their thing. Now, not all of them. And the other thing is, and this is something that is not appreciated enough in the Enneagram world, it is a self-selecting community. The kind of people who go to self-help programs, right? Who are the people that tend to go to self-help programs? People who have a hard time, how do I want to put this
Careful,
gently?
careful.
Losers. That's what I'm saying. Losers. No, of course that's not the case. But a lot of them tend to be people who are struggling on how to, deal with some of my issues. So it is a disproportionate representation around nines, or an inaccurate representation of the actual proportions. My mother's a 9. You get on the wrong side of her, she'll punch you in your face. I can guarantee.
Well, because she had to put up with you.
Well, or I could say this is the reason why I am how I am. But anyway, go ahead, Maria Jose.
Yeah, and they also pick their battles. So you won't see them being like that every time they're kind of being pushed, but they will, and when they decide to do so.
Yeah, but good question, TJ, because you're right. It's we get so many of these stereotypes in so much of the conversation about the Enneagram, and it's because people have read and probably misinterpreted books, and or heard it from people who have read and misinterpreted books, or who have simply not worked with real people around this. So it's a big pet peeve of ours on this sort of thing. So thanks for bringing it up.
One more thing to add to that is when she's describing what she wants in life, she doesn't mention career goals.
Yes.
It's all personal life stuff that, we don't know her very much aside from, 2 days in her life.
Right.
But she's single, and
what's with that?
Looks like she's put her focus on her career. And what she would really like is to have a family.
Yeah. And she also talked about sort of finding herself in the role she's in, because in college she studied, medieval French literature or something, or, French romantic poetry. So there are these 9-ish elements for sure, but they're not all clouds or pushovers like people tend to think.
If you want to find out more about my work with the Enneagram and organizations of all kinds, or our certification programs, visit me at mariosikora.com or follow me on social media.
Hi, I'm TJ Dawe, and I do one-on-one consulting on creative projects of all kinds, as well as Enneagram coaching. I teach an online course on how to create your own one-person show, and I speak at events and perform shows of my own. For more information, go to my website, www.tjdawe.ca.
This is TJ Ingrassia. To check out my YouTube series Typecast, which explores the Enneagram through film and television, go to youtube.com/typecast. And if you're interested in my professional video production services, check out tjingrassia.com.
This leaves us with Phil. And first of all, I want to know, why does he have the same name as the Groundhog? Right? There's that one. The writers had a choice here, right? Yeah, and they had time to think about it. Do we really, why give him the same name as the rodent?
I think I did read that Danny Rubin intentionally wanted him to have the same name as the Groundhog.
Is that so?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Why, I don't know, but that's the choice he made.
All right. So, all right. So, who wants to venture out on a limb here? And Maria Jose does. Okay, our returning champion. All right, she's fearless. I'm going to come back. All right, Maria Jose, tell us what type you think he is.
And I'm willing to get it right or not, but my guess is that Phil is a transmitting 6 played by a 4. And that comes through.
Interesting.
Do I need to justify it?
Justify, yeah.
Okay, so...
Provide your rationale.
I will.
Start with the transmitting 6 piece.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
So the transmitting, because he's not really good at listening. He's good at talking. He thinks that he's a celebrity. He calls himself the talent. He talks about preserving stuff with more anxiety. So he talks a lot about preserving stuff and the hotel and the food and the espresso, and it's all about how he likes his stuff, but not from a preserving place, I think.
There's a status orientation to it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. He's not navigating, I think. And again, he's not preserving. He wants to be seen. He's okay. He has an easy time articulating what he wants to say. He's in front of the camera and just feels very comfortable when he's reporting. And again, he's the talent, he's like a diva. And no conflict around that. So that's why I think he's transmitting.
So explain the 6.
So at the beginning of the movie, it's all about kind of, I deserve more, or I'm kind of uncomfortable in this role, and covering Groundhog Day for the 4th time, and it feels 4-ish. However, as time goes by and he keeps reliving that day, the expansion of his worldview is around how things should be done, and not thinking about tomorrow, and taking risks, and just doing what I want and not what I have to. A bit claustrophobic as well, like when he was on the train, about to crash with the train and do all those things. So to me, although his affect was not that 6-ish, the things that he was doing and the way in which he evolved had more to do with the 6 path than any other.
Interesting. Okay, great. Let's save the conversation of Bill Murray's type for after we talk about Phil. Okay. So, TJ, thoughts on Phil's personality style?
4 was my guess. Maria Jose, everything you said makes sense. Here's the 4 stuff that I was seeing. And transmitting also makes sense. I hadn't really thought too much about subtype. The 4 stuff, he sneers at people. He sneers at common people for being common. People like blood sausage too. People are morons. Yeah, they're hicks, Rita. When Rita's celebrating how they've been staying up singing and warming themselves by the fire and coming back and singing. He believes he's inherently better than others. He takes his success for granted. And his success seems to be on his own terms. He's doing pretty well as far as a TV broadcaster goes. He's on a major network. He gets to, or a local network, but still, he's able to use his own humor, his own style. He's able to be himself. And there's no superior that's coming in telling him he's got to shape up and do the weather properly, all right? Like, he's got freedom. He's got creative control. Things are going pretty well. And all he can think about is that he would rather be somewhere else. He would rather be somewhere further on. He believes this is going to be the last time he comes to Punxsutawney. As he goes down the levels, we see wish fulfillment and sex, indulgence, sneering at Rita's having studied 19th century French poetry. Although, just to poke a hole in my own theory, you would think that a 4 would be pretty impressed with somebody for having studied 19th century French poetry, apropos of nothing. As he goes up the levels, we see him explore his creativity. He becomes generous. He sees beauty where he couldn't have conceived of it before, namely in people. He participates in the world. He becomes altruistic and sincere and loving. He learns that doing good things are good to do for their own sake, not for money, not for fame, not to secure a place in heaven. The doing feels good. And he eventually displays healthy 1-ish qualities, including discipline and altruism, healthy 2-ish qualities, including loving, caring, knowing things about people, including a scene near the end where it's the party and he's having all these brief interactions with different people in Punxsutawney, and he gives the couple tickets to WrestleMania. And I thought, that is a mark of a pretty healthy 4. Is like, I don't like wrestling. I don't respect people who like wrestling, but you clearly love it. And this will bring you nothing but joy. And I can give this to you unselfconsciously. And he displays healthy 4-ish qualities, namely he's creative, he's collaborative, he shares his creative gifts with the world, he participates in the world, and he sees beauty in ordinary people in an ordinary place. When it's finally February 3rd and he comes out the front door with Rita, his comment is, "It's so beautiful." And he's been stuck for 10 years in the same place, in this same day, and now he sees the beauty in it. And I just thought that seemed like a pretty healthy 4, a beautiful 4 moment.
TJ Ingrassia.
All right. Well, I have a different take as well, so we're going around the circle on this one. Okay, so I'm going to make the argument that Phil is a weird hybrid of characteristics of both 8 and 3. First of all, I don't think that necessarily striving to feel powerful is the right word for him. I think other words like independent and in control is more his thing. 8s can frustrate others with their arrogance, hostility, and stubbornness. I was thinking about this, prior to when he really starts to grow and be a healthier person, he doesn't have a single human that he interacts with that he has a positive or connected interaction with. He's hostile and biting towards everyone. TJ, like you said, the blood sausage, people like blood sausages, people are morons. I don't know what blood sausage is. I'm quite sure that I would hate it, and I don't know why anyone would like it.
Maria Jose, you're a fan of blood sausage, right?
I'm not, but we eat it a lot. And my family, some people in my family love it.
Do you want to explain what blood sausage is for our listeners?
It's a sausage made of blood, very much. It's a very descriptive name. Some people put some nuts in it or rice. It has different spices that go in there, but it's pretty much blood. Sausage made of blood.
So they figured nobody would eat it if they knew what it really was. So we'll call it what it actually is, because nobody would believe that that's exactly what it is, right? And I will say, too, that blood sausage is very popular in European communities, right? Being of Eastern European descent, there was a lot of blood sausage in my early days. And the Pittsburgh area where Punxsutawney Phil is highly populated with Polish and German descendants. So it's not surprising that they spoke about blood sausage. There we go again down this road of trivia that nobody cares about, but now you know, and someday you will thank me. All right. So go ahead, TJ.
Let me see here. Okay, so he's hostile towards everyone that he interacts with. 8s have this belief about work that things work best when they are in control. The first time that he does the report after the groundhog sees his shadow, Rita asks him to do it again, and he says, "We got it," and he drops the mic and he walks away. He'd rather freeze to death on the highway than go back to Punxsutawney. At one point in the diner, he asks Rita, "You think I'm acting this way because I'm egocentric?" And she says, "I know you're egocentric. It's your defining characteristic." I thought this is interesting from the Enneagram guidebook. 8s get into trouble when they tell themselves, "The world is a threatening place that will not cut me a break. I must take from life anything good that I can get." And once he sort of realizes, I guess this is when he's at the bowling alley with Gus and the other guy, and the moment that things switch for him is when he goes from being completely out of control. He has no control over this daily loop. And the guy says there'd be no consequences. We could do whatever we wanted. So he changes. He immediately takes complete control of his situation, and he uses it to his advantage. I think at his support strategy at type 5, he's overly detached and he's very insensitive to the needs and feelings of those around him. And his neglected strategy at type 2 would be, he's sort of a lone wolf and he has no genuine connections with anybody until he grows. As he grows through the film, I think there's some aspects where he moves from what would be the low side of 8. He's arrogant, he's hostile, he's demanding. And he moves towards the high side of 8, where he's more decisive and he's confident and he's inspiring to the townspeople that are around him. Okay, so that's the 8 piece of it. And I think there's also some weird kind of 3-ish overlays too. Clearly, he's striving to feel outstanding. He wants to move up in his career. He's trying to get out of the network that he's at in Pittsburgh. He's overly self-centered. There's this thing about cutting corners for the 3. So, when he's trying to seduce Rita at first, he's trying to do it from a way of what does she basically just, I'm going to pretend to do all the things that she wants and needs. And I'm going to give sort of a simulacrum of a real relationship without having to have any real connection with her. He's ambitious and success-oriented, but he's also very shallow. He's very attention-seeking, which can be on the lower side of 3. But the things that he does pursue, he pursues expertise. He becomes an expert piano player. He learns to speak French fluently. He's an expert at throwing cards into a hat. He's a brilliant ice sculptor, as we come to learn. In the scene where him and Rita are dancing on the floor towards the end of the film, all the townspeople are coming up to him and thanking him and praising him and all this stuff. And one of the old couples, the wife says, Dr. Connors, I want to thank you for fixing Felix's back. So apparently at some point he learned to be a chiropractor or he went to med school or did something.
There's a deleted scene.
Oh, was there? Okay, yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know
scene,
that.
Yeah.
There you go. So, so there's also some growth from the low side of 3, not being considerate and not, considering the values of others, to becoming inspiring and an example of high performance and excellence. I don't think he doesn't seem necessarily flashy enough to really be a 3. And he's also, there's no positivity. He's not trying to put a positive spin. He puts really more of a negative spin on everything. So it's definitely not a true representation. But I think, sometimes we do this category of the conflicted type. So I see him as sort of this weird conflicted hybrid of those two personally.
Yeah. So I agree with the last thing you said there about this being an enneagrammatically conflicted character, right? Because it's not a pure depiction of any of the types in my perspective. It's a bit jumbled, and I do think, as Maria Jose said, there was some tension between the character as written and Bill Murray. Right. A lot of this was ad-libbed. A lot of it was, tweaked as they went. And so I do think there was this conflict.
And let me just say one last thing. There could also be some overlap there with whatever 8-ish things I might have been seeing. There could be overlap with the transmitting 6, where there can be some similar looking things that happen there.
Yeah. So if with the caveat that this character is kind of all over the place, right? I would have made the case for him being actually a navigating 4. Okay. And I'll tell you why navigating, Maria Jose. I saw your eyes pop out of your head there. Okay. But again, for me, I agree with a lot of what TJ said. I remember years ago being in the Pocono Mountains for a Riso Hudson training, and Don Riso and I took a drive to the local Walmart. Right. And, Don was a preserving 4 and very much a Manhattan person. And we walked into the Walmart, and he's wandering around staring aghast at what he is seeing. He's just looking around. He just cannot believe what he's looking at. And he says to me, do people really come here? And it was just this, and it reminded me of Phil Connor, of just this. And it wasn't as disdainful, Don wasn't being hostile or belligerent or demeaning of people. It was just, this is just so inelegant, right? And there was a lot of in Phil, this, you people, again, you're the kind of people that eat blood sausage. What do you, kind of thing. No offense, Maria Jose, to you or your family, but, or to all my relatives who also eat it.
I don't get offended. It only talks about other people's
how small
ignorance.
I am, right?
Yes.
I get it. So, but and even with the asking for espresso, which right now wouldn't be that big a deal, but in 1993, it was a little hoity-toity, and certainly in that environment, it was this contempt for the small people that came through over and over again. It was this feeling of, I do not belong with these people, right? I am special. I am different. I deserve more. And so there was all this, there was huge self-absorption. Okay. It's all about me. It's all about me. I can only see things through my lens. And that was something that came throughout the movie until the transition, of course, right? And this is what we see in 4s as they go from unhealthy to healthy, is this self-absorption turning into this real empathy and kindness toward others. I think there was a lot of that, even when you look at what he started, the skills that he started learning, right? Playing classical piano as well as playing jazz and blues on the piano, ice sculpturing,
Who would do that?
Well, a 4 would do that, right? I mean, So, and now why did I say navigating? Okay, because this is the tricky one. And Maria Jose, I hear what you're saying about the transmitting, and I think a lot of, some of the behaviors, again, I think it's a conflicted character, right? And I also think that, when of the navigating fours I have known, when they're less healthy, they're highly self-absorbed, So usually that's not a characteristic we associate with navigators, particularly Maria Jose and I, since we are navigators. We don't think about the self-absorption of navigators, right? But they can
We're too
very
healthy.
much. Well, see, I think that's what it is. We've done our work, as people like to say. I don't look like this type. I've done my work, so I don't look like the type I am.
You do. Let me tell you that you do. So do I. But go ahead.
So what I got was this, inner conflict around the transmitting thing. Okay, that there was this need to transmit, this need to kind of, project that. Now, can I make a hard case that he was a navigating four? No. The reason I say that is because he reminds me of a number of navigating fours that I've known. And my hypothesis is that that's what Bill Murray is in real life. Okay, so that may have been biasing my decision. All right.
Yeah, so I hear you. And when I think about him eating, so when he started realizing and taking advantage of this situation, it's all about not caring about the future, the glass half full or half empty, and not following kind of what he should be doing to take care of himself. It's kind of smoking, eating, risking his life. And there's something at the end. We could do whatever we want as if there's no tomorrow, To me, that's more of a six-ish thing. I mean, a theme rather than a four, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. So I think affectively, for me, the Ned Ryerson character was more of a transmitting six, right? And so I think they had very different affects.
Look, I'm with you in the affect.
Yeah.
But when I look at the behavior, the things that he's doing and what he's thinking and how he evolves, I see a lot of six.
Yeah, and it's not a completely wrong hypothesis. So,
thank you.
That's
We won't have to cut my piece, TJ. So when you edit it, you don't need to cut me altogether. I mean, you can leave it.
Whichever one of you sends me a bigger tip, that's the one I'm going to cut out. Now, does it change either of the analysis with the idea in mind, like he's eating and smoking and doing all these self-destructive habits, but he has it in his mind. There is no tomorrow. There are no consequences. It doesn't matter what he eats or does because he's going to wake up in the same bed in the state he woke up in that morning. So I don't know if that.
And because look, if there were no consequences and no tomorrow, I hate to think what my behavior would be like, at least for a while, right? I mean, I'd have been sitting there with all the desserts as well, right? I'd be seeing how many of the bottles in the bar I can drink and, so forth. So I don't want to just attribute that to, personality necessarily as what would somebody do in that situation.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Maria Jose.
Yeah. And I don't want to try to win it all, but I'll just say one more thing. He said something, sometimes you have to take chances. I'm not going to live by the rules anymore, so that's why I was like, okay. Yeah. But he was saying it with an affect that was not coherent.
Right.
Right. So.
And that's the key thing, I think, and that's the thing I want to take away, because I tell you, TJ, I almost sent a message to Maria Jose yesterday saying, I bet TJ Ingrassia says he's a 3, because I know how your mind works by this point, and you made valid points, right? There's a lot of 3-ish behavior there, and I can see some of the 8 stuff too. I can tell you as an 8, that character is, elements of 8, but not really an 8. But again, your argument is valid because of the, we'll say the camel-like nature of the character, right? There's that old saying that a camel is a horse designed by a committee, and I felt that way about this character as well, right? So it's kind of a camel. Okay. Other thoughts on? I want to talk about the other part of this, how people grow and what was represented by that, and I want to touch on Bill Murray and his Enneagram type. But any other comments on Phil that we didn't get to.
One thing I want to mention is that as a 4, I would say the premise of the movie is perfectly engineered to put a 4 in a situation they would least want to be in. A small town, a celebration of something that really means nothing, that people are excited about, singing like maybe the only thing that would be worse is if they were singing Christmas carols. And that the song he has to wake up to every day is I've Got You, Babe. A trite, treacly pop song.
Yes. And then have to listen to the Pennsylvania polka over and over again as well, right?
Is that what that song is?
It's pretty catchy.
Yeah, well, it'll be in my head all day. Yeah, but when he goes to, was it Gobbler's Knob, that's the song that's playing, the Pennsylvania polka, which, being from Pennsylvania and being Polish and German, I've heard a whole lot of that song. So, awful.
So if he's not transmitting, how do you explain the dressing up as Bronco when going to the movies?
So,
that to me.
So number one, boredom, right? You're in a situation where it's like, man, I've got to do something different from what I've done yesterday because I'm doing the same damn thing every day. So, you could attribute it to that. And again, I'm not arguing that he's not a transmitter, right? Okay, so enough of Phil and his Enneagram inconsistencies. So Bill Murray, and Maria Jose already paused this. Maria Jose, why do you think Bill Murray's a 4?
Well, because you talk so much about him and all the things that he does that are 4-ish. So I could say that I have made up my own mind on that, but it's not.
Yeah. Look, Bill Murray, by all accounts, while he's quirky and seems fun, is kind of a dick, right? I mean, and he's well known for being kind of a dick, for being a bit of a prima donna, for being self-absorbed and making everything revolve around him. And as someone put it in the on the Wikipedia page, he's a jerk, but he can make you laugh. And that's why the character of Phil worked, because he's clearly an unlikable person, but there's something about him, probably his humor, that makes you want to like him, right?
I think it was Andy McDowell that actually said that,
yes.
that he's a jerk, but...
Yeah, and, I've heard that many times from many different people, and, again, you just, the way he is just, and again, I think he's navigating just because of the way he has, stayed away from the whole Hollywood thing. Right? And one would think, navigating, he wants to be in the middle of that. No, actually what happens with the navigating 4 is I am trying to establish how I am different from everybody else, right? I like people. They're interesting to me at a distance, but I'm an outlier. Okay. And these are the ways in which I'm an outlier. And there's also this element that I see in navigating 4s of this seeking new hobbies as a way of expression, cooking, music, new careers, that sort of thing. Almost looking 7-ish in the way that they express themselves. So, I don't know. TJ, any thoughts about Bill Murray the man?
Bill Murray is not one of those... He's been really famous for a long time. You never see him on the cover of People magazine. He's not a gossip mag kind of celebrity. He rarely gives interviews. Or when he does, it's almost like he's playing a character of himself. So it is hard to get to know who the actual person is. So that makes him just tougher to discern in my case. And I haven't done research of like watching the few extended interviews there are of him. I definitely agree he's prickly and strange. And if anything, I think the fault in this movie is the scenes in which he's sincere. I don't really believe him. And I think that's where Sofia Coppola just squared the circle with the final moment in Lost in Translation when he whispers in Scarlett Johansson's ear and we don't hear it. Perfect. So we don't have to hear him and then think, nah, that's not sincere. In this, there was just a slight lack of sincerity. It's like he was playing that. I didn't think he really pulled it off.
And, some would say, that's not, 4s are authentic, sincere. Yeah. Not really, not all the time. It depends on how healthy they are, right? And and 4s can fall into playing a role, just like anybody else, particularly the navigating 4, right? Because it's about creating this persona that establishes my group identity. Go ahead, Maria. Are you going to say something there?
Yeah, that there's also this emotional intensity that some people, this guy thought that he could enact to me, his way of acting is he doesn't have to do a lot, but I know kind of I get the message, you know, and it's a kind of a very fourish characteristic, I think, this emotional intensity, and then it comes out.
He just seems sad to me, right? I mean, even though he is a comedian and a very funny guy, his natural state seems like sadness to me. And, you know, and I've seen a lot of people say that Bill Murray is a 9, and which I think is the next, I've heard people say that, but particularly it's those folks on the internet who think that they have ownership of what 4s are, and anybody who's not that version of 4 can't be. But think of what we've said about him and how other people have described him of being kind of a dick who makes everybody, you know, work around him. When have we ever said that about a 9, right? You know, we just said the opposite about Andy McDowell. When we talked about Clint Eastwood on the episode of The 9, everybody was talking about how nice he was, you know. That's not what they're saying about Bill Murray, right? They're saying, you know, kind of a dick, kind of an oddball, kind of a this, kind of that. And I just don't think there's any other Enneagram type that really fits him based on these descriptions. Okay, so enough of that. So the path to growth here, and Maria Jose, this is one of the things that made you interested in talking about the movie. So I'm going to turn this over to you. Tell us what's interesting about this movie in that regard.
Yeah, so to me, besides all the things that you mentioned at the beginning of this being like a spiritual journey or referencing that path for people, I think that it very clearly identifies what I see we do when we grow. And first, we start becoming aware. And he had plenty of time to do all of these things. So he started becoming aware of how he was perceived, and like his patterns. And he didn't like many of those. He wasn't liked, and he didn't like them either. And he started trying out new things. And those things sometimes worked, sometimes he overdid them and exaggerated them too much. And that's something we do when we start changing. So we try new things out, and we're kind of not skillful at it. And we just do too much of them or not enough, and we feel not equipped. So he goes through a phase doing that. And then you can see that he's becoming more comfortable with it. And some of the things are becoming more habitual. So he practices and then he starts being more natural about it until he seems to do them in an authentic way. And that's when it works. So when he's kind of pretending to be these caring, paying attention to Rita, she sees through that and she doesn't like it. But when he's now not even trying, she falls for him. So to me, that's kind of how change works. And it's not a straight line. And there's several things that may sabotage the process in between. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed is in the arc of what he goes through as the days repeating, there's the sequence of days when he's initially inauthentically trying to seduce Rita and it doesn't work. And then that leads into his multiple suicide attempts, which also, they don't get him out of the loop. And then that's when he turns the new leaf. And so there's a scene when he's explaining his predicament to Rita. And initially he's saying, I must be a god, I'm an immortal. And she thinks he's being sarcastic.
Not the god, a god.
And as we get deeper into the scene, we find out, okay, he's not actually trying to do anything. He's not trying to use this to grandstand or to seduce or anything. He is simply curious at his situation. And the thought that came with that is the dawning of curiosity comes after you've hit the wall. And so much personal work comes not when somebody else tells us that we should do it, or you see a list online or something like that, but when you've reached a point where you just have to have that moment of clarity, that conversation with yourself of like, what's going on? I can't keep going on like this. I don't get it. I don't want it to keep going on like this. Phil probably would not have changed at all if things had gone on the way they were. He was living in his ego pattern, and that seemed to be doing the job just fine. he seemed pretty happy with who he was. And he wasn't 100% happy with where his career was, but he had a belief that his career was on an upward trajectory. And then to add to that, personal work takes time. And it can take the exhaustion of going around and around and around and saying, what am I doing? But it builds slowly and gradually. You don't become a master pianist overnight. It takes years and years and years, but even though the day resets, he still remembers what happened in every previous day, and he still has acquired the skills that he learned the previous days. And it genuinely builds.
But he doesn't grow any older, which is interesting. I mean, I hadn't thought about that until you just said that. So when we work with our clients, the kind of approach we take, we call the awareness to action process, right? It's becoming aware of what habitual tendencies we're stuck in and recognizing that, we need to change in some way, but we always meet resistance, right? We always run into something that feels like a death, right? Whenever we start to, give up one behavior and do something else. And, Maria José was talking about how they feel change feels uncomfortable and unnatural. I like to use the analogy of it's like wearing someone else's clothes, right? It just doesn't feel quite right. But we go through this process if we really want to change of rewriting our narratives, right? Rewriting our understanding of how the world is and who we are. And that's what I see this movie being, at least once he got on track to start making change, that he's, he's questioning his assumptions and he's developing a new story about how the world is that I can be happier by letting go of my own interests and, focusing on the interests of others and receive the reward from that, right? Which is very much a four-ish path, okay, that connection to point two. Also, one of the themes that came up when we talk about the core qualities and accelerators, the core quality at point four is individuality, right? Who am I versus the world around me, and losing contact with that. And what is the path to growth, the accelerator, is what we call disidentification, right? So it's letting go of these assumptions about myself, right? And he had all these assumptions. I'm the talent, right? I'm this person. I'm somebody, that there's a network that wants me, right? And just kind of letting go and giving up on trying to hold on to this sense of identity and just becoming what naturally emerges from who he fundamentally is. And that's the path of the four. Again, whether that character was a clear four or not, I'm not convinced. But I think the point TJ made earlier, this movie is really four-ish, right, in a lot of ways. Okay, so any other thoughts on this before we wrap up? Go ahead, Maria.
Yes. So there's the fact that I think we discussed it earlier that he was okay the way he was before,
or seemed to think he was okay.
And I agree. But later, when you realize that he did like Rita, but wasn't doing anything about it, so he was comfortable, but not as happy or flourishing as he could have. So this whole process gave him an opportunity to expand the way in which he accomplished what he wanted. And when you were saying that at the beginning, when he got kind of on track, but it's probably important to mention that when you start becoming aware and changing, you might need to try things that don't work and test it. You will not always get it right. And that might be an obstacle for change. To say, okay, I'm trying this, I'm changing, it's difficult and it's not working. Well, maybe you need to look somewhere else and find something else to try. And another way to rewrite your story until it feels authentic and it allows me to fulfill my need to feel, in this case, unique, like Phil.
And we always tell people that change is not a linear process. It's like a spiral, right? That you go around and you end up back at the same place, but you end up at a higher level perhaps, right? Or from a different perspective. So it's the hero's journey always ends up where it starts. Okay, but you're different at that point. And, so, and this is what it was with him, that there was this ongoing process, this reiteration from one day to the next of who he was and who he was becoming. Okay. So, final thoughts on the characters. Oh, we didn't do the question, would this movie have been better or worse if he was a 1, 4, or 8? So we're not quite sure, what he was. TJ Dawe, if this character was a clear 4, would you see any differences in the movie?
If he was like a textbook 4, I can imagine he would probably, maybe he did, we just didn't see it, read every book available in the town library and bookstores, and he would probably learn a whole lot more instruments and become proficient at a whole lot of other creative disciplines on his way to his eventual realization.
Great. If he was a 1, since we have 2 1s here, TJ and Maria Jose, how would this character have been different? How would this movie have been different if he was a 1?
Well, I'll just speak for myself. I think that if picturing what would my growth path look like if I was trapped in that same day, and it would probably be something along the lines of, if we think about striving to feel perfect. Okay, I'm going to take this day and I'm going to make it perfect. I'm going to solve every problem in this town. I'm going to fix every wrong. I'm going to right every wrong. And the growth path would probably be something like learning to let go of control. Actually, you don't have control over everything. You can't make everything perfect, and learning to let go of that.
It's interesting because there was there were some things in the script that didn't make it into the movie, and it had to do with solving problems like you're talking about, right? Keeping people safe. Like he was going to put up a roadblock to block the truck that brought in the seafood that the guy in the restaurant choked on, right? And so therefore he couldn't order the seafood and so forth. So there was this, undercurrent of fixing the world, TJ. Maria Jose, any other thoughts?
I hope that if I was in that position, I would very quickly start trying to have more fun. That was my journey.
We'll have fun after we fix everything, Maria Jose.
Yeah, well, I've realized that the less I care, the more I enjoy. So it's, yeah.
Yeah. And if the character was an 8, I got to say the decadence phase of his experience would have been a whole lot longer and a whole lot more extreme, because if there were no consequences and, so forth, the line from Dostoevsky came to mind that if there were no God, there would be no limits or something to that effect. If it was an 8, there'd have been a whole lot more shenanigans and roustabouting during the movie, I think. But all right, great. So so this draws us to a close. Maria Jose, thank you so much for joining us. I do want to finish with a quote from the myth of Sisyphus that kind of captures the theme of the movie very nicely, I think, in the resolution. The universe henceforth, without a master, seems to him neither sterile nor futile. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. So one must imagine Phil Connor happy, and this happiness, this Sisyphean happiness through the lens of Camus, I think is what released Phil Connor from the endless recurrence or the eternal recurrence. So a lesson there for all of us. Okay, folks, Maria Jose, thanks again. TJ and TJ, great stuff, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Enneagram in a Movie podcast. Be sure to join us for the next exciting episode. In the meantime, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and join us on social media.